There are moments in life when it feels like the doors of abundance have been shut for generations, when your family has worked hard, prayed long, and yet the flow of blessing seems to have skipped your name. You look back and see stories of struggle, fathers who lost everything, mothers who gave everything, and children who inherited nothing but pain. But I came to tell you today the story doesn't end in lack when the blood begins to speak. You see, the blood of Jesus doesn't just wash away sin. It speaks restoration, it declares redemption, and it calls forth everything that was lost through generations. When the enemy stole your family's inheritance, when wrong decisions or hidden curses locked up your destiny, the blood stepped into the courtroom of heaven and cried, "Paid in full." The blood speaks louder than poverty, louder than fear, louder than every generational failure. When the blood speaks, the chains that held your name are broken, and what was withheld begins to return, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. This is the moment where divine transfer begins. Heaven starts remembering every tear, every prayer, every act of faith your forefathers made. What they couldn't finish, you will, because you stand under a covenant sealed in blood. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is raising generational wealth, lost opportunities, and buried promises in your bloodline. So lift your hands not in sorrow, but in faith, because when the blood speaks, the curse is silenced. Restoration is not coming, it's already here. The blood is speaking your family's name today. There is a cry that echoes beyond time, a sound not heard by the ears but felt in the spirit. It is the cry of the blood that was shed on Calvary, still speaking on behalf of those who think their story has ended in ruin. The blood speaks of forgiveness, but it also speaks of restoration. It doesn't only cleanse, it reclaims. Every drop that touched the ground carried a divine declaration that nothing truly lost is ever beyond recovery when it's placed under the power of redemption. You may think years of failure, mistakes, or generational loss have sealed your destiny, but heaven is still responding to that crimson voice that says, "It is finished." The blood is not silent. It has never been silent. It speaks in the unseen realm, reaching through generations to call back what belongs to your family. Every blessing, every dream, every inheritance that was swallowed by time or taken by the enemy. When the blood speaks, it doesn't just remind God of your forgiveness. It reminds creation of your ownership. Everything that was once assigned to your lineage begins to stir again because the blood carries your spiritual DNA. It connects you not to the failures of your ancestors, but to the covenant of divine provision. Some of your forefathers may have prayed for breakthroughs they never lived to see, but the blood has not forgotten those prayers. It carries every cry, every act of faith, and every seed sown in tears. It remembers. You see, the blood restores not just what was lost in your lifetime, but what was lost in your bloodline. When it speaks, it says, "To lack, you have no legal right here anymore." Restoration begins when you realize the blood has already opened the heavenly ledger in your favor. You may be the first in your family to truly believe that divine wealth isn't sinful but sacred, a tool for kingdom purpose. That shift didn't come by chance. It came because the blood is speaking through you now. You are not an accident in the family line. You are the fulfillment of generations of faith. Every battle that felt inherited, every cycle that kept repeating, is now being rewritten by the sound of the blood. When it speaks, it announces to the spiritual realm that restitution is due. The enemy may have taken resources, opportunities, or peace, but he cannot keep what has been marked by the blood. Heaven's record is clear. Everything redeemed by the blood must be restored. Every injustice in your family's financial story is under divine review, and the verdict has already been declared. Restoration in full measure. The blood doesn't restore things to how they were, it brings them back multiplied. God never returns what was lost in the same condition. He redeems it, refines it, and multiplies it until it carries the fragrance of divine grace. That's why, when restoration comes, it often feels like overflow. The enemy thought he was ending something when he caused loss or delay, but the blood turned it into a seed. Every closed door was recorded in heaven as an opportunity for greater glory. When the blood speaks, it doesn't just unlock finances, it unlocks generational vision. The ideas your grandparents carried but could never fulfill, the land your family once owned but lost unjustly, the honor your name once held. The blood is calling it all back into alignment. Restoration is not random. It is divine justice responding to the blood's voice. The blood still speaks in the boardroom, in the courtroom, in the marketplace, and even in the quiet places of your heart. It whispers to contracts, to land titles, to forgotten dreams, return to their rightful owner. It speaks to the hearts of those who owe you favor and moves them to act on your behalf. It calls forth divine connections, opportunities, and resources that were hidden. It speaks louder than the economy, louder than inflation, louder than any system of limitation. When the blood speaks restoration, it doesn't need the approval of men, it carries the authority of heaven. That's why doors will open where your name was once rejected. That's why influence will find you, even when you're not seeking it. Because the blood is not negotiating, it's commanding. Restoration is heaven's legal order on your behalf. So now the question is not whether the blood still speaks. The question is, are you listening? Because when you begin to align your confession with what the blood declares, restoration manifests faster than you can imagine. The blood doesn't speak of loss, it speaks of victory. It doesn't point to what's gone. It points to what's coming back. You are standing on sacred ground every time you plead the blood over your life, your family, and your future. It's not a ritual, it's a proclamation of restoration. The same blood that broke sin's curse is breaking financial bondage. The same blood that redeemed your soul is reclaiming your inheritance. It's not over for your family. The blood is still speaking. And every word it speaks carries the power to rebuild what was destroyed, restore what was stolen, and release what was delayed. There comes a moment when heaven looks upon a family line and decides that the cycle must end. And in that moment, God chooses a person, a vessel, a voice to stand in the gap. That person is you. You were not born at this time in this family by accident. You carry within you the power to break what has bound generations before you. The same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, and that spirit does not tolerate bondage. The enemy may have built walls around your bloodline, walls of lack, fear, sickness, and shame, but the blood has marked you to bring them down. You are not here to repeat the story. You are here to rewrite it. Every chain that held your parents, every limit that silenced your forefathers, every curse that shadowed your name, they all begin to tremble when you rise in faith. The anointing on your life carries a generational assignment to end what was never meant to continue. You're the chain breaker because heaven saw your willingness to believe. God doesn't look for perfection, he looks for surrender. He looks for someone who will say, "It stops with me." Every addiction, every pattern of defeat, every whisper of "you'll never make it," it bows when you stand in your God-given authority. The moment you recognize that you're not fighting alone, you shift the entire lineage. Angels begin to move, destinies realign, and what once ran through your family like poison begins to turn into power. You are the breaker because you're the believer. The power of a believer who stands in faith can change not only their life, but their entire bloodline. The blood that runs spiritually through your veins is stronger than any curse that runs physically through your name. For too long, your family may have lived under the weight of unseen spiritual cycles, financial struggles that repeated, dreams that always fell short, relationships that never healed. But when a chain breaker arises, the pattern is shattered. You were chosen to confront what others tolerated. It's not because you're better, it's because you're anointed. The grace on your life carries the strength to face what your ancestors could not overcome. And the beautiful truth is this: you don't break chains through striving, you break them through believing. You break them by standing in your authority as a child of the covenant. Every time you declare the promises of God, the chains lose their strength. Every time you choose obedience where others chose compromise, the grip of the enemy weakens. Every act of faith is a blow to the foundation of generational bondage. You are not just surviving, you are rebuilding an inheritance of freedom. There are chains that cannot survive in the presence of revelation. When you understand who you are in Christ, every limit imposed by your past begins to fall away. The enemy thrives in ignorance, but he trembles when you discover your identity. You are not a product of failure. You are a carrier of divine purpose. You were sent to break financial limits, emotional strongholds, and spiritual ceilings. You were sent to reclaim what was rightfully yours before sin and fear robbed your family of it. The enemy may have stolen opportunities, but he cannot stop destiny once it's awakened. When you walk in revelation, you carry the authority of heaven's courtroom. You don't plead for mercy from the past. You enforce the verdict of victory written in the blood. The moment you accept that truth, heaven begins to restore what hell dismantled. You are the chain breaker, but remember, chains break in silence before they break in sight. You may not see the evidence immediately, but every time you pray, you are shaking foundations. Every time you give in faith when it feels impossible, you are cutting spiritual cords that tied your family to lack. Every time you forgive when bitterness would be easier, you are cleansing the spiritual DNA of your lineage. The battle is not always loud. Sometimes it's fought in your private surrender. But make no mistake, heaven records every act of obedience. The chain breaker's strength is not in emotion, but in endurance. Keep standing, because with each act of faith, heaven is marking your family's story with restoration. Your children will live free because you refuse to live bound. Generations from now, someone will speak your name and say, "That's where everything changed." You will be known not as the one who continued the pain, but as the one who stopped it. You will be remembered as the one who rose up when everything said you couldn't. You will be the reason curses were turned into blessings, the reason cycles of debt became cycles of abundance, the reason despair became hope. You are the chain breaker, the turning point in your family's history. When the blood speaks and faith responds, history bows to destiny. You have been equipped, anointed, and positioned for such a time as this. The story that once began in tears will end in triumph, because you chose to believe that the same power that broke death itself is breaking every chain with your name on it. There is a movement happening in the unseen realm, a divine shift orchestrated by heaven itself. What seemed delayed is now being released. What appeared lost is being located, and what was withheld is being commanded to move in your direction. The kingdom operates by divine transfer. Wealth, wisdom, favor, and influence flow toward those aligned with covenant purpose. God is not making new resources. He's redistributing what already exists. There are businesses, lands, and ideas that have been held up by others, waiting for the rightful inheritor. You. The same God who transferred the wealth of Egypt into the hands of Israel has not changed his pattern. When obedience meets divine timing, transfer begins. Heaven is shifting resources out of the hands of those who misuse them into the hands of those who will multiply them for God's glory. This is not chance. This is divine justice. Every prayer, every seed, every sacrifice has built momentum in the Spirit. Now the motion of transfer is underway, unseen but unstoppable. You may have felt overlooked, underqualified, or unseen, but heaven has not forgotten your faithfulness. Divine transfer doesn't begin when you see abundance. It begins when God sees your readiness. The Father will not place glory into the hands of greed, nor wealth into the hearts that will worship it. He looks for stewards, those who carry humility in their success and worship in their increase. When he finds one, he releases the flow. That's why your preparation mattered even when no one was watching. Every hidden act of faith, every moment of integrity, when compromise was easier, they were qualifying moments. You've been tested not to prove your weakness, but to prepare your capacity. Divine transfer cannot land in unprepared hands, but it will rush towards surrendered ones. The shift is not about money, it's about mission. Heaven funds purpose. When you align your purpose with His plan, you become a magnet for divine transfer. There are seasons where it seems like the wicked prosper, but that's only because heaven allows a temporary holding pattern. What the unrighteous hold is often storage for the righteous. God doesn't forget what belongs to His children. He simply waits until the timing aligns with faith. Every resource wrongly used, every opportunity unjustly withheld, is already being rerouted through divine decree. You are entering a time where the wealth of nations, the strategies of leaders, and the favor of systems are shifting hands. Transfer happens first in the spirit. Contracts, approvals, and breakthroughs begin to align in the unseen before they manifest in your reality. The same way Joseph was positioned in Egypt before the famine came, God has been positioning you for what's about to flow. The famine will not break you, it will introduce you to the abundance prepared for you. Every divine transfer begins with divine positioning, and every positioning begins with divine obedience. When divine transfer is in motion, resistance often increases, not because you're losing, but because the enemy senses what's coming. He cannot stop the transfer, but he'll attempt to distract the vessel. That's why spiritual focus is vital in this season. You cannot be moved by what you see. You must be anchored in what God has spoken. The enemy wants you to doubt before delivery, but faith secures the transfer. Heaven's economy doesn't move by market trends. It moves by spiritual trust. The same hands that multiplied loaves and fish are now multiplying your resources, connections, and favor. What once trickled will begin to overflow, not because of your might, but because of your mantle. You carry an assignment that demands resources, and heaven is too intentional to let His purpose lack provision. The transfer isn't random. It's strategic. Every divine movement has a divine mission behind it. Divine transfer doesn't just bless individuals, it restores legacies. God is not merely giving to you, He's giving through you. The abundance that's coming carries the healing of generations. It's meant to rebuild what poverty destroyed, to lift others where oppression once ruled, to sponsor kingdom works that will outlive your name. The wealth is not your destination, it's your instrument. You are the conduit through which heaven's economy will flow into the earth. That's why this transfer is not coming as a reward, it's coming as a responsibility. The moment you understand that divine increases divine trust, the floodgates open wider. God transfers to those who think generationally, not greedily. The more your heart beats for kingdom purpose, the faster the transfer accelerates. You are not collecting, you are restoring. The blessings coming are not just harvest, they are reparations for what was stolen, delayed, or diminished across time. Right now, heaven's accounting is active. Angels are aligning transactions, destiny connections, and supernatural opportunities in your favor. What once took years will happen in days. People will call it coincidence, but you'll know it's covenant. You are stepping into a flow that your ancestors prayed for, but never saw. Their faith built the foundation. Your obedience will complete the manifestation. The transfer is in motion. Unseen forces are working to bring justice, favor, and abundance into your hands. This is not just a shift of resources, but a shift of authority. Where you once borrowed, you will now lend. Where you once struggled, you will now sponsor. The motion is not stopping, it's accelerating. Heaven has already signed the decree. Divine transfer is active, and everything aligned with your purpose is on its way into your possession. There comes a moment when heaven declares enough, a moment when the pain of the past, the cycles of failure, and the echoes of generational bondage meet the unshakable power of redemption. That moment happened when the blood touched the cross. Every curse that spoke against your family, every limitation that whispered, "You'll never rise," was silenced the instant the blood began to speak. The curse was never meant to be your inheritance. It was the byproduct of separation. But when Christ restored that connection, every generational voice of defeat lost its legal right to speak. The blood didn't negotiate with the curse, it destroyed its authority. The sound of the curse fades where the blood speaks, because the blood doesn't argue, it declares. It says paid in full. That means every failure in your family line that was birthed out of sin, fear, or ignorance has now met its end. The blood has closed the case. You are no longer under the verdict of what once controlled your name. You are under the covering of eternal redemption. The curse often disguises itself as normalcy, patterns that repeat, emotions that cycle, poverty that lingers, sickness that seems hereditary. But heaven does not call what Jesus paid for normal. The curse might have run through your family, but it stops where revelation begins. The moment you understand the authority of the cross, you realize the curse can no longer speak. It can try to echo, but it has no voice in the courtroom of grace. The blood testifies louder. It stands as eternal evidence that your freedom is not pending, it's permanent. You're not fighting for victory, you're enforcing one. Every generational limitation loses power the moment faith agrees with what heaven already declared. The curse is silenced not by effort, but by awareness of who you are and whose blood covers you. It cannot survive where revelation resides because truth always overrules tradition. The curse speaks in memories, in cycles, in words once spoken by those who didn't know the power of life and death in their tongue. But the moment you came under the covenant of grace, a new sound began to echo through your bloodline. That sound was freedom. The blood rewrote your family story, erasing the lines of defeat and redrawing them in favor. The curse cannot speak where the blood is applied. Every voice that said you will never change, you will fail like the rest, or your name will always be forgotten, they are now void in the presence of redemption. The blood didn't just free you from your own sins, it reached backward to silence the power of inherited ones. The cross became the line that divided what was and what will never be again. From that moment, your DNA was rewritten in grace. What your ancestors endured ends with you. You are the proof that the curse has lost its sound. When heaven silences a curse, it doesn't just mute it, it replaces it with blessing. God never leaves a void. He fills it with divine reversal. Every place the curse once spoke lack, the blood now speaks abundance. Every area where the curse whispered rejection, the blood shouts acceptance. Every generational fear is replaced with generational faith. That's why you can stand boldly and say, I am not who my past says I am. The curse was once a voice of bondage. Now it's a testimony of victory. What used to hold your family in chains is now the very reason they will see freedom. The blood not only breaks, it rebuilds. It not only silences, it restores sound to the voice of blessing. You're not just free from the curse. You're now an instrument of generational restoration. The same family name that once carried pain will now carry praise. The echo of defeat has been replaced by the anthem of redemption. Even when the enemy tries to remind you of what once was, remember this truth. Reminders are not authority. The curse can't speak unless you give it a platform. That's why you must guard your agreement. Your words are spiritual instruments. They either echo heaven or empower hell. Speak life, speak promise, speak as one who carries the blood's testimony. The curse was silenced forever, but you must live like it. Stop rehearsing the pain of the past and start releasing the sound of praise for what's already done. Heaven responds to agreement, and when your mouth aligns with the blood's declaration, everything contrary begins to crumble. The curse cannot outlive confession rooted in faith. The silence of the curse becomes permanent when the sound of worship becomes constant. You are walking proof that grace speaks louder than guilt and that freedom speaks stronger than fear. Every generation produces one who will not bow to the past, one who will stand on the authority of the blood and declare that the curse's time is over. You are that one. You are the voice heaven raised to enforce the silence of the curse. What once destroyed families, drained finances, and delayed destinies can no longer operate in your name. The blood is your legal covering, your divine proof, your eternal declaration that the curse is void. You are walking in the fulfillment of a verdict already rendered in heaven. No weapon formed shall prosper. The curse was the weapon, but the blood was the answer. And when the blood speaks, every accusation falls silent. The curse may have echoed for generations. But now it meets its final silence, not by chance, but by covenant. The blood has spoken, heaven has agreed, and the curse has been silenced forever. When we look back over everything that has been spoken, the blood that still speaks restoration, the power that makes you the chain breaker, the divine transfer now in motion, and the eternal truth that the curse is silenced forever, one message rises above all. God has not forgotten your name. Every delay was preparing you. Every loss was positioning you, and every prayer was building a bridge for the supernatural to reach your life. You are standing in a divine moment where heaven's promises are no longer distant words but living realities. The blood of Jesus has not only redeemed your soul, it has redeemed your story, your inheritance, and your generations to come. This is your season to walk boldly into what has already been secured. You were not chosen to struggle endlessly, but to rise victoriously. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead is breathing fresh life into the ruins of your past and transforming them into the foundations of generational blessing. What once seemed impossible is now inevitable, for the Word and the blood agree. Restoration, freedom, and abundance are yours. You carry heaven's signature on your destiny, and no curse, no system, no circumstance can undo what God has decreed. So lift your eyes, child of God, and see that the story is turning in your favor. The blood speaks louder than your failures. The promise shines brighter than your pain, and the blessing runs deeper than the battle. You are walking in divine authority, divine favor, and divine inheritance. Let your heart rest. Heaven has already finished what you're only beginning to see unfold. Thank you for standing in faith, for listening with an open heart, and for believing that God's best is still ahead. May the grace of the Lord cover you, strengthen you, and lead you into everlasting victory. God bless you.